Welcome to another edition of the Crotchety Old Man Podcast. This is one of your hosts, George Crumley, and also in the studio with me today is my man PC. PC, how we doing today?
Hey, man, I'm 6 feet above, which is about as tall as I'm ever going to get in this life. And I'm talking. So you got to figure that, life is very good for the both of us.
I know that's right. Man. I have no complaints whatsoever. None whatsoever. This is here again a great day to join together with you and address our audience and talk about a new subject and help them help them with their finances. So what we got on store for them today?
Social Security benefits has been a big thing and a big story in news and in financial publications and whatnot. So I think we could get this party started, man, by talking about Social Security, the benefits, how it came about, and all of that.
That sounds good, man. As I always like to, talk about as far as Social Security is you need to understand the rules that go along with Social Security. There's probably about 10 to 15 different ways you can actually draw down your Social Security. And that comes in those, it also comes with like spousal benefits and things of that nature. So you really need to educate yourself. It's not just about reaching that ripe old age and then saying, Uncle Sam, where's my money? You got to make sure that you're drawing that money down at the right time that it's going to benefit you, because you could be leaving some on the table. But then you got to look at it and say, well, if I take it now, I'm in great health and I may outrun this, so I'll get the money back on the back end. So it's all individual choice. So we make sure my audience understands that it's individually on how you want to take that and how it's going to benefit your lifestyle.
So let's start off, George, by talking about what Social Security is in the first place for our audience.
Sure.
Because we have some folk that are real familiar with Social Security, and some folks that are our listeners that have no idea what it's like.
Right.
So I'll start off by saying that Social Security was meant to be a safety net for retirees to maintain their standard of living. It started out in 1935. Actually, to be quite frank with you, August 14th of 1935. Roosevelt started it, President Roosevelt, and he was trying to help disadvantaged Americans. You have to remember this was right around the crash of the stock market between 1929 and 1935. So there was a lot of impoverished families as a result of the crash of the stock market, and that's what led to Roosevelt's decision to start this safety net in the first place.
So it was never supposed to be a crutch. It was just supposed to be something that was going to help folks was it a short period of time? Was it for a long period of time? Or was it not even discussed?
Well, I think, as far as Roosevelt was concerned, to put it in context, it was for a long period of time, and the concept was to pay into this, and the paying into this from people's um, uh, from people's payments from their jobs and so forth and so on would support the monies that are taken out from people that do retire.
Right. Well, as we've known over the years, Social Security has really grown. So just to kind of here again, put it in perspective, if you were born in 1958, your full retirement age is 66 and an eighth, 8 months, 66 and 8 months. Okay. So, you can start receiving your benefits at 62, but you're going to receive considerably less than you would if you waited to that age of 66. And then if you go to 70, you're even going to make more. So, over the years, that has changed because it used to be 65. But here again, as you can see, by changes the government has made, that age of 65 has moved up to 66 and 8 months.
That's true. That is true. That is true. And when you think about it, you had mentioned earlier that there are so many reasons and so much money. There are about 15 or 16 different things that you were talking about that Social Security is used for. One of the things it's used for, it supports retirees, of course. But the other thing that Social Security covers is disability. that where people are put out of work because of disabilities. It covers for them. They're paid at a higher benefit until their full retirement or Social Security age is concerned, and it pops right back to the age at where they're the currency at where they're supposed to be at that particular point in time. The other one that you talked about briefly was spousal support. You know, when a spouse dies, the spouse that's living and the children get a Social Security benefit.
Well, let's stop right there. So that's the age old question. So, yeah, if you're married and you take Social Security, does your wife get half of yours?
Yes, and then the children have a percentage that's taken out of your benefit that they get paid for as well.
So that's if you pass. But I'm saying if you're still alive. So for example, your wife retires before you. She's going to get Social Security based on her age and based on how much she's paid in. Then once you retire, maybe people don't realize that, but if you make more money than your wife, she's going to now get a raise and she's going to be making half of what you make.
Now, see, I didn't know that, George.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, if you just for example, if your yearly benefit, your monthly benefit is $3,000, and she's getting say $900 because that's what her numbers came out to. Once you retire, and she retires first. Yeah, once you retire, she'll go up from 900 to 1,500 because she'll get half. Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The second piece to that is if you pass first, she'll get all of yours. So meaning that instead of the 15, she'll get a bump up to $3,000 as to what you were getting. Okay. So I start off saying misnomer or confusion because a lot of people think, especially on the female or the person that's making less money, thinks that they'll get theirs plus half of yours. It don't work that way. You get half of theirs. You don't get both checks. Okay, so.
And then then my question, George, is does it work the opposite way?
Yeah, absolutely.
If
If
the man is making less money and the woman is making more, let's talk about that for.
Yes, I mean it's the same thing. Yeah, absolutely. If the woman's making more money and you retire first, or you still retire second, once she retires, you'll get a bump in yours. But check this out. Okay, so if you're divorced, okay, but you were married at least 10 years and you retire, your wife here again is entitled to half of your Social Security. Here again, does it affect your check? No. But whatever that number is, say again 3,000, she would get 1,500 a month. Because of the fact that you were married for 10 years, but it has nothing to do with your 3,000. You'll still get 3,000.
Well, actually,
a month.
if I could augment what you were saying,
Mm-hmm.
depending upon, so let's say, for instance, you're married for 10 years to the woman.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to, first of all, you're not going to be able to receive that benefit until her retirement age. Okay, that's number one. Number two, your benefit is going to be based on the amount of time that you were married. So let's say a person that was married to 15 years, okay, they're only going to get that benefit from the time they were married to the time that they divorced. So within that 15-year period or within that 10-year period. So in a divorce, Social Security is a little tricky, and Social Security is used as a way of putting money into the pot in terms of you know what you're going to get out of the divorce once you dissolve the marriage, so to speak.
I'll have to live with you on that one because I think you're saying the same thing I'm saying. You got to be married at least a minimum of 10 years. And yeah, you both have to be retired to receive it, either one to receive it. You can't receive it if you're still working. It's not until you retire. And but as far as the last piece, I'm not sure how it's regulated As far as if you were married for 10 years, 15 or 20 years, I've never heard it regulated that way. But, that's something for our audience that maybe need to go back and research for themselves. But I know the minimum, you got to be married for 10 years. And here again, it doesn't affect what you get as the person, as the main or the higher breadwinner. It doesn't have any effect on that.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. So
Yeah.
people would ask, how does Social Security work? And I would say that Social Security is paid by payroll taxes, and it's also paid by trust funds. Okay, and so right now, as of 2022, the payout for Social Security was $66 million on a monthly basis, whereas people were retiring and they were tapping into their Social Security. This was the amount of money that they got paid, and that's a lot of money.
Right. But even with that said, like I said, the elephant in the room is that 2034, they think is going to go away. Well,
Well, there are pros and cons to that, and I kind of agree with that in a sense. Um, and I disagree with it from a sense that it really depends upon what the solutions will be, and we can talk about that a little later. But for instance, you got $2.9 trillion that is used for budgetary needs from the Congress. So, in other words, my point here is that the Congress borrows money from our Social Security benefit. Now, that's one of the reasons why people say that, by 2034, 2035, the benefit won't be available. However, the $2.9 trillion that's used for budgetary needs from the Congress is borrowed with interest. And so that means to say that, and also the borrowing with interest, the interest is backed by government bonds. So actually, that misnomer about the fact that because they're borrowing money and taking money and funds out of the Social Security pot is going to deplete funds is not necessarily so. Because when you think of the borrowing of the Social Security funds, it nets an approximately $804 billion between 2018 and 2027, let's say. So there's a situation there, and this was conducted. This survey was conducted by the Motley Fool, and so their point of view is that because they're borrowing at such a rate, and the bonds are protecting that interest at such and such a rate, that may not necessarily be true. That by 2034, the Social Security benefit is going to be depleted.
yeah, I mean, those are pretty good assumptions. Yeah, I mean, based on that. But I think what the most politicians are saying that is because we have less people in the workforce. And a lot of this started with COVID. A lot of people jumped out of the workforce after COVID. But there's just not enough. It's just, money in and money out. There's more money. Like you said, there's more people retiring. There's more people retiring with full benefits, and you have less people working. So you've got to get more people in the system working and providing to the fund to keep it going. And that's the rule of thumb is you got to have money coming in and to support the money going out. And that's why they think 2034 that Social Security will be in trouble. But here again, from my point of view, I don't think there's a politician out there that's going to cut his own throat by saying let's do away with Social Security. I mean, that's a big one. We're not going to vote for you because there's too many people that's on this system, and there's too many people coming onto the system that are looking for Social Security to be a part of their retirement. So I don't think it's going to go that way. I think what you're probably going to see, and we kind of talked about that before, where the age has gone from 65 now to 66 and 8 months, is probably going to move up the scale a little bit more. It may move up to 67, 68, and who knows where it's going to stop. But obviously, if the age goes up, that you can receive full retirement, that will give them enough time to put more money in there to bolster the Social Security pot.
And you know, I want to. That's a very good point that you just raised about the reasons why, and some of the other reasons why the decline in Social Security is the shift in demographics, for instance. That's another reason, and also the interest rates. When the interest rates are low, um, the lower the returns on the borrowing of surplus funds, and so you have less surplus funds coming into the pot because the fact that the borrowing is at a lower interest rate, so they're not making as much money off the interest as they would be if the interest rate was higher. And of course, like you so eloquently stated, political challenges, the need for partisanship on how to address these long term issues will either bring long term solvency or not.
Well,
What you think,
it's
Jody?
interesting because, what I just talked about was one of the proposals, as far as, like I said, increasing the age, increasing the amount of the payroll tax to bolster Social Security. But there's a couple of economists out there that are saying what they need to do is they need to get away, they need to end the 401k and program. And on the surface, you say, well, why would they want to do that? But one of the things that we may not understand is that when you enroll in a 401k, that money is not taxed. So, for example, here again, I'll use simple math. So if you make $3,000 and you've got $200 going into your 401k, you're only taxed at the $2,800. So those numbers, to trying to put them in perspective, they're estimating that over 200 billion is going into 401k, therefore not being taxed, therefore not generating revenue to support the Social Security. So that's money they want to tap into.
And how do you think that's going to affect the solvency of Social Security?
Well, I think it would help the solvency issue, but it's going to make a lot of people upset because, here again, I mean, I probably wouldn't be retired if I couldn't have taken advantage of the 401k program. I mean,
True
you
that.
think about that 401k program where they're matching a certain percentage of the dollars you're putting in, is something that really, people have relied on to bolster and to get them in position to retire. But there's a flip side to that. And that is middle class and low income people. Most of them aren't in the 401k program. So
And why
here
do you
again,
think that is? Why do you say that, George?
because because the fact that they're living I'm gonna make a real claim, they're living paycheck to paycheck. So
Okay,
at the end of the day, you don't have money to put in the 401k program, and
true.
that's not a priority. It's more priority to put food on your table and pay your rent. So what happens is, if they're not putting money in a 401k program, they're not putting the money in an IRA program, Social Security is going away, or then they're not going to really have an avenue to retire at a decent age. I mean, they're going to find themselves working for a long time because of the fact that the system has now been designed against them, which is not the first time we'll see something like that.
No, and I agree with you because in my particular case, I retired in 2020. I enjoyed getting up at 12 o'clock in the afternoon if I wanted to sleep in or do whatever I wanted to do. And because the housing industry is going up, rents are going up. I mean, they're going through the roof. People who are renting right now are paying a house note in most cases for rent. So um, I'm having to go back to work. You know, it's at almost 72 years of age, just to augment, what I'm getting from Social Security and living the kind of lifestyle that I want to live because I like to party, to be honest with you. So, without without a job that would augment the Social Security benefit, it's hard for a lot of people who were in the workforce to really not work unless you work to the point where your Social Security can keep you from having to work the rest of your life.
Well, absolutely. And Peace, we'll go back to some of the things we were talking about earlier. Say, for example, you worked W W-2 for say 10 years, 15 years. You decided to be an entrepreneur. You struggled through that. You took a couple odd jobs, maybe 1099, whereas the W-2 were paying into payroll tax, but your entrepreneurial was not, and you didn't put together a retirement program. You're not putting into a IRA. So you're real heavily dependent on that Social Security. But here's the kicker. Social Security is based on the amount of money that you put in. So you could be on the low end when you retire. So you could be making $2,000 a month. Who can live on $2,000 a month?
Exactly.
So you're forced to work longer, to get a second job, to support yourself and your family. I mean, here again, that's the way the system is built. But, as I tell my young folks, you need to look at your Social Security now, when you get 45 and 50 and see where you are in the program, how much money you put in, how many quarters you put in, to see what that payout is going to be. You don't want to wait till you're 62, 65 and then looking and just assuming you're going to get an X number amount. You need to look earlier. Yeah, you got to look earlier to see where I'm at and to say, hey, well, heck, maybe I need to go out. For example, real dear friend of mine was an entrepreneur, and we actually were the same age. And what he looked at was when he was maybe 45, he had an opportunity to go to work for the public school district, and that's what he decided to do. Smart thing, because then he could put money in Social Security for the next 15, 30, no, actually he put in for the next 30 years. And therefore being able to retire with a nice Social Security. So those are the decisions that sometimes you have to make when you start getting to 45 and 50, knowing that those earlier years you didn't put money in Social Security. Now you need to get a regular job so you can bolster what your Social Security is going to look like.
And another thing to add to your point is that the younger people need to look at what kind of jobs and what the benefits of those jobs will offer you once you get to this age of retirement. Because you got some jobs to deal with the 401k as far as savings goes. You got other jobs that you buy into that have pensions. So you figure like this: if you have a job that has a pension, you've been working that job for 10, 20, 30 years. Okay, you're going to pull out a certain amount, or you're going to be awarded a certain amount through your pension, and you're going to be able to add that to your Social Security benefit for whatever it is. And you may have a very decent way of living from that point on.
We'll be right back.
Hi, this is George Cromley with the Crotchety Old Men Podcast. Hopefully you've been enjoying the information we've been providing on the podcast, and we'd like to continue to do that. But we'd also like to get some feedback from you. So if you like what you're hearing, or if you don't like what you're hearing, drop us a line at thecrotchetyoldmenpodcast@gmail.com. That's thecrotchetyoldmenpodcast@gmail.com. And remember, you can hear us not only on YouTube, but you can also hear us on your favorite podcast platform, being iHeart, Google, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Take care. And as we always say on the Crotchety Old Man Podcast, if you didn't know, now you know.
We're back.
Well, I mean, that's a good thought, but that's one of the reasons that the 401k was kind of brought in the pictures, because most corporations decided to do away with the pension.
True that.
I know my pension was stopped in 94. So I got a pension for about 10 years, from 84 to 94. But after that, they stopped it. Most companies don't provide a pension. And just for our listening audience, the difference between a pension and a 401k is a pension is 100% money provided by the company you're working for in a fund that's going to, like you say, support you like an annuity once you retire. Whereas a 401k, you're putting in an amount, they're putting in an amount. So, companies looked at it and said, well, heck, I'm putting all this money in an account. But what's the real benefit? Let's share the wealth. And that's why they came up with the 401k.
True. So let's talk about some of the solutions that some of these economists have come up with. One of the things that I would consider, or that the economists have been talking about, is to adjust the taxable earnings cap, and only a small portion of high earners would be subject to SSI taxes, and that's going to increase the monies that go into the pool by large high earners. What do you think about that one?
Well, you have to kind of be careful with that. If you're only going to tax the high earners, just from a pure number perspective, you have less high earners than you have middle class and lower earners. So you need everybody putting in. Now, if you're saying you're going to make the higher earners put in more, it's going to be some type of percentage. I mean, maybe that's viable, but you can't cut out more of the population just because they're not making a certain amount of money. Because here again, yeah, the higher earners are making more money, but it's less people.
Right, but the higher earners are making enough money to where some of them aren't paying any into the fund at all. So if you raise the cap, based on their whatever it is that they're earning from their businesses, they'll be able to pay a little bit more than what they're paying now, and that'll help to benefit the Social Security fund.
Well, I think you got to identify these higher earners. I mean, when you say a higher earner, I'm thinking a W-2 employee. But I mean, I'm not sure where you're going with, higher earners, because I mean, if you're talking about business owners, your Elon Musk and all these guys, they don't get a W-2. I mean, their money comes from non-taxable. I mean, that's the big misnomer, is that people think that you can raise certain taxes and you're going to hit them in the pocket, but they're not earning their money that way. The way they earn their money is, through non-taxable sources. So you have to be careful. You have to design something specifically for, those billionaires, because just the regular income tax is not going to hit them in the pocket.
And that's true. But you also have higher earners that are making 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 that are W-2 people.
Absolutely.
And that's going to help if the cap is raised just a little bit. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I said. If it's a sliding scale, but you can't eliminate. You can't eliminate the lower end. You've got to. If you're talking about a sliding scale, well, I mean, it really is. It is somewhat of a sliding scale, because if you make $400,000 a year, your percentage of payroll tax is obviously going to be higher than someone making $30,000 a year. So you are going to be putting in more just from a sheer numbers perspective.
Now, and the other thing that could be a possible solution would be investment diversification, and that's exploring alternative investment options beyond the government bonds that protect the interest from borrowing. So if you look at other alternatives like investing in opportunities that are coming out of Africa or South America, that might help the fund as well.
Sound like you want to take my Social Security money and go to Vegas.
No, I take your Social Security money and go to Ghana, brother.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, but I mean, wow. That's some economists I'm sure are thinking of things like that, just like the ones that came up with the 401k thing. So yeah, I'm
And then
sure there's a
you and
lot
I
of
were
things like that
talking
on the
about
table. Interesting though. That's an interesting
we
one though.
we had a rousing discussion about comprehensive immigration reform. To legalize more immigrants could expand the workforce and thereby contributing more to the Social Security fund. George,
Well, I mean, yeah, that's another assumption that you're assuming
true.
that just because they have a Social Security card that they're going to work and get a W-2, therefore contributing more to the fund. I mean that it's possible, but it's not. I don't think it's a fact because here again, we talked about that earlier. There's a lot of people, Generation Z, Generation X. There's a lot of people that are entrepreneurs now, and they're not contributing to the Social Security. So if you have
It's true.
immigrants coming in, they may not necessarily do the same thing. I mean, but you do. We've shown where a lot of people are coming from China. They are highly educated, and they probably will be the ones. But those coming from other, less fortunate countries, Guatemala, Venezuela, they may end up being your day labor type individuals, therefore not necessarily paying into the funds, but then drawing on the funds in other ways. So that's kind of a double-edged sword. But we can talk about immigration another day because I think that in itself is a money making ordeal that they never talk about. They always talk about the people coming in. I thought, and we're gonna have to end this pretty soon. But I want to tell you this interesting story I
Go
heard on the
ahead, keep
news
on,
today.
George.
This the news today. So you've got these thieves, for any other word. So they follow people that are coming in across the border of Mexico. They follow them into the United States, and before the people that are coming in illegally are surrender themselves, they accost them and they hold them up and they take their money. Now, here again, if is it that easy to get in the United States? They hold these people up, they take their money, and then they go back into Mexico because they said they killed one of them and the other three escaped back into Mexico. Now it goes, how can people do that? How can you go and it's like you can go and come into Mexico across the border at will. So if you can't tell me there's money involved, it's not just a political. It's obviously a political struggle, but there's also a lot of
True.
money involved, and that's why this
And
thing
that's
continues to
why
go
I
on.
would say to our younger listeners that you really need to pay attention and you really need to vote. You need to vote on people who are going to support your interests. And this is, and when I talk about supporting your interest in particular, we're talking about things like comprehensive immigration reform and adjusting the means testing and whatnot, um, and investment diversification. All this depends upon who you put in the office and who's going to represent your interests.
All good stuff, man. And this has been a really good Crotchety Old Man podcast. I've enjoyed the information. Hopefully, our audience is also. And as you know, we're on YouTube now, so you can get a quick snapshot of what we're talking about on YouTube, Crotchety Old Man podcast, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, because we're coming at you and we're providing all this information that hopefully you can enjoy and use. So with that said, Mr. PC, what you got for us? What kind of pearls of wisdom you got for us?
Well, we're talking about things that are changing. We're talking about change and so forth. So I picked this pearl out of the harbor here, and it goes like this: if you feel resistant to change, look in the mirror and affirm. It is only thought, and thought can be changed. I am open to change. I am willing to change. I greet the new with open arms. I am willing to learn now new things every day. Each problem has a solution. All experiences are opportunities for me to learn and to grow. I am safe.
Well said. Well said. Well said. As we always say on the Crotchety Old Men podcast, hey, if you didn't know, hey,
Now you
now
know.
you know. Hey, be safe. Peace.
Peace.